is Indian country today.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Trahant. The Jamestown Scallam tribe in Northwestern Washington is celebrating 40 years of federal recognition. The tribe's history with the United States government goes back to 1855, when the tribe signed the Point No Point Treaty. Yet 100 years later, the government changed its policy, thus setting up the struggle for federal recognition. It took years of proving who they were and what their tie to the land was before they gained federal recognition on February 10, 1981. Today, Ron Allen is the tribal chairman and CEO of the Jamestown Scallam tribe. In fact, he was the first tribal chairman and has served in that position since the tribe was recognized. He joins us to discuss the progress of his tribe and what he has planned for the future.
Well, when I got involved with the tribe way back in the mid-'70s, and primarily because I used to play a lot of Indian basketball and I needed my Indian blue card that the BIA used to issue. And because we weren't federally recognized, they couldn't reissue them. So that became a problem with my basketball career. So they talked me into coming onto the council. This is in '75, and in '77, I became the chair, and I started leading the charge, or picked up the charge on becoming federally recognized. In the late '70s, mid-'70s, late '70s is when the federal recognition process was unfolding in the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And so we quickly got our petition together, got in the queue list. Back in that time, around '75, '76, we became the 19th application, and as it kept unfolding, the rules and criteria kept changing because of the strength of ours and the support that we had in our region here in the Northwest. We quickly became number 2 behind Grand Traverse up in Michigan. And so fortunately, fortunately, unfortunately, it took us about six and a half years to actually come to a success. So that was in '81. And I moved from the chair into the chair CEO position in the early '80s after we got recognized, and the journey began.
I asked Chairman Allen how COVID is impacting the tribe.
Well, it certainly hurt our businesses. As we were moving into self-governance and then the self-reliance, which is the business arm of the tribe, that had a huge impact on us. And then our ability to serve our people, because here in Washington, the governor ordered the whole state, basically lock down and stay home, stay safe, mask up, practice good hygiene, etc. And it became a challenge. As everyone knows, serving from the families, the children, all the way to the elders, which is the most challenging, making sure we can take care of them. So the pandemic really did set us back. We weren't prepared for this kind of incident. It scrambled that really caused us to step back here after a full year of experiencing it, and to rethink, how we can be better prepared for these kinds of emergencies. And but we're making it work as everyone's doing this virtual forum, with Zoom calls and what have you. We're surviving. So we just had a huge Zoom celebration with our whole community. And it was a pretty large Brady Bunch on the screen for all those who wanted to join in, including doing the traditional songs and prayers that we would do. Now it's being orchestrated. So we're surviving like we always have for many generations, and we're making it work. Ours is going great. We are at a very high level of vaccinating our people, and it's working exceptional. We have a very good health clinic here that we developed many years ago, and we took a little different approach with our clinic. We serve both our Indian community and our non-Indian community, so that's how we've been able to make it a better success. So, and of course, we prioritize our people, and it made it real easy for us to put together the vaccination program. And quite frankly, we're way ahead of the schedule here in Washington State. Governor actually has called us up and asked, how are we doing that? Because you have to secure the numbers of vaccine to vaccinate as many people as you can. And I've got a great team. So it's working. And it certainly does dial down the anxiety and the pressure by our community. When you look at all the standards which you'd measure the quality of healthcare in America, the tribes are always lagging way behind. So we're really down on the totem pole of quality of services, at the level of funding made available for our clinics and hospitals and elder care and so forth. But that's been a struggle for us for many generations. But when it came to emergencies like this, we stepped up, and it shows how strong and how well organized the tribes are as a government and the way we provide our services, in this case, healthcare.
Chairman Allen has been at the forefront of Medicare and Medicaid innovations in Washington state and nationally.
Well, there's a lot to it that's been unfolding over the years in terms of how CMS applies to Medicaid and Medicare, for that matter, how they apply. One of the big changes, well, first of all, Medicaid, quite frankly, it doesn't work for most of mainstream healthcare. The rates just don't work. For us, it does. We can make it work, and we've turned our healthcare program and clinic into business and to make it work. You have to be able to generate revenue, or you can't recruit and retain high-level professionals, from the doctors, from the nurse specialists, RNs, and the specialist healthcare, et cetera. So we have really worked hard at it. There's a lot of different elements to it to make it work for us. One of them is telehealth, so that we recover the full rate of service through the telehealth. It allows us to reach particularly senior elder citizens who often deter or look for reasons why not to come into the clinic and take care of their healthcare needs. And so it has really become one of the positive outcomes that came out of the pandemic. And but being able to generate the rates of service for Medicaid, basically the economically disadvantaged community, which Indian country falls in for the most part, it allows us to be able to provide a stronger clinic and stronger hospitals for those who have hospitals. We don't have them here in the Northwest, but they are elsewhere, Alaska, Oklahoma, et cetera. But it's a big deal, Mark. And you have to really step back and rethink how you provide health care. And if you turn it into a business, if you treat it like a business in terms of cost recovery, it's a very complicated system, from state recoveries, the private health sector, third-party revenues, and so forth, which includes Medicaid and Medicare reimbursements. From state to state, it differs. We're very fortunate here in Washington state. We have a very proactive, very strongly supportive of tribal operations with our state. And we have an advisory board that interfaces with our state Medicaid and Medicare program, well, Medicaid, I'm sorry, program. So it works well. But we know that a lot of our sister tribes in different states don't have that relationship. So for CMS to modify a system to directly reimburse the tribes and not have to work through the state for these cost recoveries really improves the efficiency. Now, we've been trying to work hard to get the state Medicaid directors to be supportive of this concept and why it really is a win-win proposition. Took a long time for Oklahoma to come to grips with if you can provide Medicaid and get the appropriate reimbursements, then it works for you. And Oklahoma, finally saw the light and made changes. It took the people and not the legislature and the governor to make that happen. And so it showed that it works. So yes, improving that relationship, and we're very hopeful here with the Biden administration. We think there's going to be a much more positive disposition to changing the laws and the regulations to directly interface with the tribal operations. And for us, That's consistent with the government-to-government relationship that we have with the United States.
That was Ron Allen, Chairman and CEO of the Jamestown Scallam tribe. When we come back, we'll hear how drone technology is making a difference in Alaska. The Aleut community of St. Paul in Alaska is putting itself on the map. An Economic Development Administration STEM grant is preparing community members for jobs, such as drone pilots, private commercial aircraft, fuel handling, and hazmat training. Only 7 of these STEM grants were awarded nationwide. We are joined by Dylan Kanduzzi, who's the project manager for the Aleut community of St. Paul Island under the Department of Business and Economic Development. The community is a federally recognized Alaska Native village located in the Bering Sea. I asked Mr. Kanduzzi if he was surprised that education was the key in their needs assessment.
Education is very important to the community. The capacity for education on site during the needs assessment and at that time was fairly limited, basically limited to K through 12. A good chunk of students go off-site for either their high school education or post-secondary education. And so given those basics, it made a lot of sense to me that education would be a priority, and specifically development of education opportunities on site.
How did drones come up?
Well, there's sort of a history of how we got here. So I'll give you the brief version. So back in 2017, we partnered with a company called Advanced Aerial Education, who facilitated a 107 class drone training on site in St. Paul. And just for perspective, the 107 class drones are the smaller drones that most people probably are familiar with. They're the quadcopters. And through that class, our goal was to train pilots on site so they could do work with those drones. Primarily, we use those for monitoring wildlife and environment and doing some survey work as well. But we really wanted to build that capacity within the community as part of economic diversification. So we trained pilots and instructors in that course and put those skills to work on site and also through educating others. That was the beginning of the community's interest in drones, and that was really spurred on by the community's passion for flight. If you look at where St. Paul Island is, it's in the middle of the Bering Sea, pretty far from the mainland. And so flight and logistics is really a point of consideration for that community. And developing some of those capacities on site, I think, is key given that logistical consideration and just the geographic location of St. Paul. From there, I work for the Department of Business and Economic Development. And so guided by the SEDS and guided by the community through the Tribal Council, we look for opportunities to bring investment and economic scale into the community. And so an outgrowth of the work that we did in 107 and drone work was that we identified a company in Saberwing Incorporated, which is a Class 5 drone manufacturer, experimental drone manufacturer. So when you think about the different classes, Class 1 through 4 drones, the 107 class are the small drones. When we talk about a Class 5 drone, it's really the size of an airplane. But what makes it a drone is it's semi-autonomous. And so Saberwing is developing kind of the next generation of aircraft, semi-autonomous cargo aircraft. And we formed a joint venture partnership with them in 2018. So that really is what led us to expanding our interest in kind of this high-tech drone field, and what leads us to the interest in the EDA STEM grant.
When you look forward, you see all kinds of way this technology is being used by really all kinds of industries. That opens up a lot of job possibilities for people who want to stay and live in St. Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked a little bit about the logistics, but for St. Paul, scale of economy is important. I think this is true not only for St. Paul Island and the community there, but rural Alaska communities in general, where you really want to look for opportunities to build on the local capacity, local expertise. The best strategy that we found to do that is to partner with external entities, be that Saberwing or for our education side with other universities. And when we look at the capacities on St. Paul, there's a long history of technological expertise and research given the geographic location in the Bering Sea. And so we wanted to build opportunities around that work. A lot of that work previously had gone to, contractors that didn't live on St. Paul, because finding experts on site in fields, STEM-related fields or biological sciences, can be challenging. And so part of our engagement and part of the ADA program is to really build that on site so that individuals within the community can step into these roles as we start to test this drone. And I think that has scale and scope for Alaska as a whole. This class of drone really is designed to kind of, as I said, be the next generation of aircraft. It has a potential significant impact into the airspace of Alaska, which relies predominantly on air travel for its logistics for rural communities. And absolutely, I think there's scale and scope, not only within St. Paul, but Alaska as a whole and in the nation as well. And I mentioned research is one of those operations that we can start to really build and grow education systems that allow workforce training and development and expand out our workforce and expand out the activities around our workforce. So that's what I see for the next 5 years.
We only have about a minute left, but what other technologies do you see working in this regard?
Well, the Bering Sea is an interesting place. It's sort of parked right in the middle of the intersection with the Arctic Ocean. And there's a lot of technologies, I think, come into play as Arctic shipping lanes open up. I think St. Paul is in an amazing position to be sort of a hub of not only those technologies, but for that region. And we can talk about that in terms of defense or education or research. But I really think that for St. Paul, those are the emerging opportunities. And I think St. Paul is in a great position locally to manifest some of those.
That was Dylan Kanduzzi from the Aleut community of St. Paul in Alaska, from the Department of Business and Economic Development. Sandra Hale Schulman recently profiled 2 artists who are bringing the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous people to fashion and fine art. Her article, The Powerful Image of a Red Handprint, was recently posted on our website. Sandra joins us now to talk about her story and the images that are being created. Dante Biss Grayson is one of these artists.
His story was really fascinating to me. He is a war veteran. He did several tours of Iraq and Kuwait and Afghanistan. And he said he came back to the Southwest and he had so much trauma from what he saw in those tours that he wanted to do something immediate that could be creative but could also be socially helpful. So being an artist, which is unusual that he would come out of a war situation like that and immediately turn to art, he latched onto the image of the red handprint and decided he could translate this into something that would be beautiful but also make people socially aware or curious. So he digitally printed a red handprint onto these beautiful skirts, large, very large, and made a line of 400 skirts that is almost sold out. He's donated many of them. And it's a beautiful way of getting the message out, but also something wearable and gorgeous. I think probably he was always, a creative person and an artist. And I guess maybe he felt like he needed to, I didn't specifically ask him much about why he got into the military, but I think it was maybe something he just felt that was called to do, necessary to do. But when he got out of it and he started having children, and I think he became more aware of what was going on with women and the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women. Initially when I saw these images, I came across them online, I was sure that a woman had done this. And then when I connected with him, I was kind of surprised that it was not only a man, but a war veteran that was making these. It's called the 400 Ribbon Skirt Project, and he's been giving them to battered women's shelters in the US and in Canada. He said the idea is to create medicine bundles with the skirts. So he packages the skirts with, I guess, sweetgrass and with sage bundles, kind of gives a whole healing kit to go along with the skirt, which is really nice, interesting idea because it gives a fuller healing process, a fuller package, I guess you could say, as to what the intention of this skirt is.
Another activist is Lehigh Sanchez, who has indigenized the Mona Lisa.
He has always been, if you follow him, I actually came to him through his fashions. He makes these gorgeous Navajo hats that he literally braids in crystals and pieces of turquoise and sage bundles into the hats, but he's also a visual artist. So the way that he has been doing his art is he takes classic images like of the Mona Lisa, and there's a famous painting of Vermeer, the girl with the turquoise, the girl with the pearl earring, and he translates them into native imagery. So this one that I found really striking, and in fact, I went ahead and I bought one of the signed prints from him, is called Creator's Promise, that he takes the Mona Lisa and updates it with indigenous imagery. She has tattoos on her fingers that reads Missing Murdered Indigenous Women. The other hand reads Hope. She's got tattoos around her neck and her hand. She's got feathers in her hair, but she's got a big handprint across her face. So that is the strongest missing and murdered Indigenous women symbol. It's bringing a cultural issue that is very dark, but into the creative realm. And I think it reaches a whole new audience that way. People that are maybe only interested in art, you know, may come to this issue. I mean, if I saw someone wearing one of these skirts, I would say, why is there a handprint? You know, what does that mean? And then that leads you into a different avenue. The same with this Mona Lisa image that he made. Somebody would say, oh, it's the Mona Lisa, but then you really like, I just say, no, that's not. That's, you know, as old, if not older than the Mona Lisa. And the red handprint being very strong, what has culturally happened to, you know, to women and as a larger social issue. So I think art can really bring a whole new audience in a way that's maybe not so harsh and not so threatening, but more inviting. I know the skirts have certainly sold out. I already had some musician friends, some female musician friends interested in buying the skirts. I went ahead and bought one of the prints from Lehigh. I was just so taken with them. So I think as the, you know, the fashion world and the art world, yes, they've always been interested in social messages. But this is very specific and very strong to Native communities. I think it's interesting, these are both being done by men. You know, the painting and the fashion designer are both men. That they're connecting so strongly with these women's issues, I think is very interesting. I think it's a great kind of, you know, a lot of Native tribes were maternal, matrilineal societies. And of course, women elders, you know, have always been the caretakers and are the strong people in these communities. So I think it's interesting that these male artists are connecting so strongly to that and making really sophisticated, beautiful, powerful art from it.
That was Cherokee writer Sandra Hale Schulman on activism and art. Next, we turn to culinary art. Sean Sherman is the sous chef in Minneapolis, Minnesota. From the Ogallala Lakota Nation, Sherman gives us a preview of a new restaurant opening this spring.
My name is Sean Sherman. I am the CEO and founder of the company The Sous Chef, based here in Minneapolis, and we are in the future home of the restaurant Owamini by The Sous Chef, which is going to be opening very soon. And we're going to be serving a lot of healthy indigenous food that's relevant to this area and being able to tell a lot of story with our food. We prioritize purchasing from indigenous vendors around us first. And we're just going to do a very regionally based menu that's going to be really focused on the foods and the flavors of right here. We're just really excited to create a menu that's going to center around that. It's just going to be an amazing project to be able to create something that is Dakota inspired on Dakota land and really tell the history of this land right where we're standing.
My name is Dana Thompson. I am co-owner and COO of the company The Sous Chef. We're really excited to tell the Dakota story, which we feel hasn't been told yet. And we want to do that through food and community and cultural preservation. Sean and I were really excited to get this project, and we didn't realize that we were also going to be able to develop a really incredible education component so that people are going to be able to come down to Waterworks and have a walking tour, being able to identify all these trees and plants that are actually food and medicine and ceremony and have so many different uses. We want the community to be really deeply involved in that and learn to identify plants wherever they are.
I think it's just going to be really important to be able to have an indigenous focused restaurant. So it's really going to be a first for Minneapolis to really kind of showcase a beautiful way to create a modern indigenous food place that's going to be welcoming, healthy, and also just gorgeous.
Sean and I started working with the Minneapolis Park Board and the Park Foundation in 2015. We've just created these great partnerships that I think are going to continue to grow and evolve once we get the restaurant open and start leveraging all the things that we can do down on the river. I just keep thinking about how excited we are to be able to tell the Dakota story of this land. There's been so much homage paid to the industrial history of this area, and the Dakota history has so much wisdom and beauty, and I think the time is right for people to hear it and to understand it and to incorporate it into their lives, because it's truly a message of sustainability.
That was the sous chef in Minneapolis. For more stories and updates, visit us online at IndianCountryToday.com. From all of us in the newsroom, be well, our relatives. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Trahant.
Take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
Indian Country Today is recorded at the Phoenix Indian School Visitor Center in Phoenix, Arizona.
This is Indian Country Today.